If it's not safe, it shouldn't happen. Full stop. Really, our pursuit of safety is a pursuit of growing healthy kids.
Hello and welcome to Spotlight on Student Digital Safety, the Courier podcast, where we unpack the most interesting stories, strategies, and learnings on student digital safety for schools, by schools leading the way all around the world. I'm Yasmin London, your host for this series, and I'm incredibly excited to welcome you to today's Spotlight guest and introduce you to Anthony England. Anthony is the Director of Innovative Learning Technologies at Pymble Ladies College, an outstanding all-girls independent school located in Sydney, Australia. Welcome, Anthony. It is so great to have you on the show. How are you?
Yeah, well, thank you, Yasmin, and thank you so much for thinking of me and asking me to join you. I'm really
Uh,
looking forward to our chat today.
Me too. I have to say, I've got a bit of a bias. I have worked in Pymble before. It's such a fantastic school, and so innovative. So I'm really excited to delve into the details of how you do it. But before we do that, one of the things that I like to do first is find out a bit about you as an educator, why you love working with young people. You've had a really illustrious career. Can you tell us a bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, started, look, like everyone, go to school and wasn't quite sure what to do and took a year off and ended up saying, no, what I love to do is to see people be their best self and grow. And so I had a lot of choices at the time, but decided, I think education is going to be my game. So I started off as a teacher, and you have a great impact on the kids that you teach, and you start to wonder, how can I grow my impact? And I learnt that the tools that we use either nudge us towards doing good or frustrate us and stopping doing the good we want to do as a teacher. And so I sort of became addicted not to the flashing lights of technology, but rather what it liberates or what it blocks. And so I started to build some tools for the school I was at, and that ended up becoming my first company. And I then sold that, and after a bumpy road, went back to my first love and joined Pymble back in 2016. But still, that part of me, that entrepreneur part of me, about how do I promote the good through the tools we have access to, has sort of crept to the fore, and have found myself once more building for better. Um, so it's all about growth in the future, and I love um, you and I. Sorry to say it, Yasmin, but we aren't going to be around in 100 years. But those that we
What do you mean?
teach will inherit the things that we leave behind to make a better world. And I love the investment in the future.
It's such a fantastic answer because, in the end, what we're talking about here is legacy, right? What do we want to leave the students of tomorrow with, the leaders of our world? And one of the things that I really love about you is that you focus a lot on technology for good. I think it can be really easy to fall into that fear based mindset. And, that's totally understandable when it comes to schools today. They're so overwhelmed with so many different things. And the inclusion of new technologies, AI, which we'll talk about today, can really overwhelm them. And I think that, it's a good segue to my next question for you, which is around how you describe the digital environment for schools right now. What are you seeing?
Yeah, look, I think that safety question is the right first question for us to ask. If it's not safe, it shouldn't happen, full stop. And so if you can't get past that gate, then any whiz bang tech is not okay, really. And so I look at the AI and education framework that Australia has published, and a lot of that is around guardrails for, is this okay? Is this safe? Are your assessments safe? Are others safe? Is your data safe? Is it biased? It's all just making sure we can navigate pretty jagged technological frontier safely. And so I love the focus on safety that people I talk with have, because it's the right first step. But my nudge then is, it's a double-edged sword. There are also equal opportunities for tech to create good. And so once we can ensure that tech is safe, I have a little bit of a scaffold to support that, and that is um, how can we make sure the tech uh, is seamless and easy to use? Because if it's annoying, then I know my people won't use it. But then how does it support what they're wanting to do rather than what um, you or I or some other company would do? They have hopes, they have hurts, and so we want to make sure that if we look at AI, for example, how to support people, it's a great muse to have. And only then, if you've done those first three, safe, seamless, and supportive, can we even start to think about these brave new futures of possibility and hope? How do you do even better? So I call that one superior. So look, I think wisdom's needed. Often I think of, I'm not like this, but we would do research papers and we'd work out what best practice is, and then we look at how we could implement that within our context. But the rise of AI, there is no best practice. We are the experiment. And so it really requires some wisdom to help navigate. And so those four S's for me,
Mm.
safe, seamless, supportive, and superior, give me some guardrails to reflect on what's possible, because we've got to practice and be the experiment rather than just following what's there, because it is really in a big way a step jump from what we've done with technology prior.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we could talk really quickly about that concept of safety, I can hear a lot of the listeners today sort of saying, how do we know if it's safe? Do we have to wait for, our departments of education, our governing bodies to tell us that something is safe? Can we innovate in the way that you might be doing at Pymble? How do they have certainty around safety? Because I think that's one of the problems. Everybody's concerned about making that fatal error or doing something wrong or causing harm. And, for so many people in schools today, they definitely don't want to make that mistake. So,
Mm-hmm.
how can they create certainty around safety?
Yeah. Um, so a good word for me to reflect on with this one. I've got lots of answers and keep asking questions for more ideas. But I think we're moving from an attention economy, the TikTok, Instawatts of the world, who are vying for your attention to convert to advertising dollar, to a trust economy, where the tools that you can trust will be the tools that you'll use. And so, in this fake news world, how do you know what's true, what's trustable, what's real? And in all the dross that's going to get created, how do you know what's important and what does good actually look like? So, how do we create tools that are trustable becomes a really important question in that safe. Can you trust it? Can we trust our assessments that the kids aren't going to cheat? Can we trust the GPTs, those AI bits, that what they've said is actually correct and helpful, that it's aligned with what we want as teachers for the students to be progressing at what pace? Um, that muse of trust is really helpful for people to think about. How do we know this tool can be trusted? And so um, the data it's used to train on, the biases that it has, the information that it's giving, how others might access that data, it's all about trust, trust, trust. And there's some, you know, uh, big stories out there about AI responses that shouldn't be trusted, and quite a scary world out there when you look at the fake world. That what's the the cost of generation and AI generation is truth and trust. And so I actually think a big skill we need to start to focus on with our students is being truth detectives, and to be connected. And I'm talking about these new words now about how to build safety, to be connected and belong to a community where they can have that detective mindset about what is truth and what can be trusted, but then have that community that they can unpack things with and lean into as they navigate a pretty fraught world. Um, Another thing I should say that I'm very keen on is a focus on the user and not the tool. That really our pursuit of safety is a pursuit of growing healthy kids. And the The dangers are all the same. I think they've got spotlight on some of the risks that AI has introduced, but growing resilient kids has been part of what every parent, carer, teacher has been wanting to do since day dot. And so that's, in fact, more true now that we need to have a really deliberate way to grow resilient kids in a protective community, that they're informed, that they have agency, that they know what good or not good is, and can navigate their digital world just like they would their physical world wisely. And I think just because they're young, they're not going to do it automatically. And we need to be quite deliberate in how we can foster those sorts of, future generations.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that you talk about addressing core issues or foundational issues that may need a bit of help or development in young people rather than blaming the technology. And I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle, especially if we're talking about the fear of new technology for educators or for schools in general. Actually, we have more power than we think we do to influence outcomes when we focus on the behavior rather than just the tool that I guess exacerbates that behavior. And I guess when we think about safety as well, another observation that I've made recently is, as schools, we're focused a lot on academic dishonesty when it comes to things like AI, but the word safety really needs to encompass, I guess, the online harms that we're also starting to see. You mentioned misinformation. The World Economic Forum has said that that's the number one threat to humanity over the next 2 years. We're seeing the
Wow.
rise of students, creating deep fakes of each other and even of their staff, of the staff at the school, notification tools, things like that. So I think when it comes to a well-being concept of safety, that's another area, I guess, as educators, we really need to look at. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think this is not a technology game that we're talking about. This is a humanity lens, and well-being um, is the focus. And the domain that happens to be the point of discussion is that digital world, but it's about their well-being. Absolutely agree with what you've just said.
Yeah, it's a big focus area, but I think I like to share that because as schools, no matter what your role in schools, whether you're a DSL, whether you're a superintendent, whether you're a director of IT, when we focus on the skill development and those foundational issues, we can control the tech and the iteration of whatever is coming next,
Mm.
and I think that's often some of the overwhelm that we feel.
Yeah,
Now,
and
where,
Jansen, before you go on, you tapped into
yes,
something in my mind that's a bit of a hot button for me and probably some
yeah.
listeners, which is the assessment piece.
Mm,
I think that's where often the rubber hits the road around safety and our existing practice. And AI really challenges that because if you're assessing student mastery through what kids make, then if AI can make as well or better, are you assessing the student or the tool they have access to? And
mm,
so it's a real existential crisis around assessment practice. And so the easy and very wrong option is to go down the whack-a-mole challenge of finding the AI and whacking it. And
mm,
that's an arms race that can never be won. And it
mm,
also damages the teacher-student relationship by putting the teacher in the position of suspicion and policing rather than growth and support. And so I actually um, think that assessment practices should be nudged in a couple of different ways. And so we can move on to other aspects. Um, the only thing I would say, if there's one takeaway out of assessment, is that if you can nudge it towards the process that people go through to get to that end product and not just the end product, you're going to create quite a protective assessment ecosystem because at any point, the students can show you their thinking about how they got there. And so you know that's very them. And they could hopefully use AI tools to do even better, but they're not outsourcing or substituting themselves for AI. And it's
mm.
just about having those footprints of the process they went through to get there that is the protective piece. And tax governments processes do the same. They say keep your auditable files as you produce that end product because you may
Mm.
be audited. We just need to know your footprints. And we can do that with assessment practice as well. And so the DAI AI checkers is so very the wrong way of trying to keep assessment safe. It's a fruitless, actually dangerous practice because it makes it an us and them.
Mm,
And you don't want the teachers to be the police, you want them to be the coach. So
mm.
I'm quite passionate about what assessment should be,
Yeah.
and it ain't assessment AI checkers.
I really like that. I guess I think of that as trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. You know, we've now got this technology and trying to utilize, I guess, the same systems and the same ways of doing things isn't going to work. And as you say, it can actually be damaging. There's a lot of technology out there that can detect AI tools, but I think that's not the point. It's about understanding that we need that visibility, but really finding innovative ways to try and do things differently in the
Yeah,
future. And that
absolutely.
brings us to, I guess, the topic we're going to delve into a little bit more here, which is how schools can innovate with AI and really leverage it for good in education. Now, can you give us a bit of a story about why this became your focus? Was there a problem or an issue that arose at the school that piqued your interest and made you pay attention to this?
Yeah, lots. I'll give you a longer answer than that, but there's the first
Okay.
one. Um, so, first of all, my journey to being the builder with AI. I actually think this is helpful for everybody, and that is I used it first, lots and lots and lots. I read lots and lots, and I needed to know how I felt and what I loved and hated about it to inform what I think we could use it for good. I could clearly see the for bad, but
Mm,
without experiencing it, trying it, failing, trying again, loving it, hating it, and then thinking and sharing with other people's thoughts about their experience, I wasn't in a good position to build. So fast track to the build. I mentioned before how I love tech, not for the flashing lights, but for the impact it can have on people and help them do good quicker. Um, AI is often seen as an efficiency gain tool, but that in education is the wrong thing to think about because learning isn't a speed game. It's fail filled. um, you fail, you try again, you get frustrated, and finally you understand that concept. That's slow, and
mm,
it's a rough journey. And so, getting a summary of a book, a cheat notes, isn't necessarily going to be helpful for
mm.
learning. So, a better muse is what's the good outcome that you want to achieve, and how can you make that easy and quick for teachers who are time poor to do, for professional services staff to do. But that's the first point. What's the good that you want? And so I'll tell you about the latest thing that we've done. I've got a portal, schoolportal.ai is the site. Um, and uh, in that, I've put a number of tools, and I'll talk about two. One that we're just about to release, and then one is oh my goodness, this is Nirvana, what I'm heading for. Um,
Fabulous.
yeah, the one that I get sad about is often our administration systems. We record information about the student. They did this. I saw this. This is they're a B student. They're an A student. They've got concerns about their reading level, whatever it is. It's about them, and it's rarely to them, and it's even less
Mm,
rarely to their carers. And so
mm,
what we've done is we actually have a siloed a potential learning community. So I'm thinking about how can I create a supportive community that helps that kid be the best they can be. And so if our tools make it difficult to record the note, takes too much time, I'm not going to bother to write to the
yeah.
kid. I'm not going to include the carer. And so I move on with my day because I'm too busy. But as a teacher, I would love to do that, but it's just too difficult. So the tool that I've put out there, you write your intent. And that's what does the teacher bring? Intent and wisdom. Um, but the words that wrap around your observation and the intent and the nudge that you would like the student to take or the celebration that you want to acknowledge, those words to communicate to someone else, as long as I can give that to the AI and it shows my insight and it names the student, then I love that AI can help me craft those words well to communicate my intent and my insight. So they'll say, Yasmin performed really well in class, was collaborative and creative in her presentation. That's what I want to say.
Mhm.
Click the button, and then AI will put that into an appropriate pastoral note for our system. So that's, AI takes a bit to generate, but not too long.
Mhm.
Let's call it 5 seconds, boom, done. I can edit it because I want to make sure it's right.
Mhm.
But then what it also does is it will have an age appropriate note to the student. Hey, Yaz, wow, you smashed it in class, la, 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 la.
Amazing.
Knows you as a 6 year old or a 16-year-old. And one button, I'm actually including you so you know how I'm seeing your learning and growth.
Yeah.
And often I'm too busy to do that. I might have 24 kids in my class,
Mm.
6 classes in a
Mm.
day. That ain't going to happen. But now one button, done. And then there's also a note to the carer so that
Right.
they can be invited to say, oh my goodness, Yaz, at the dinner table, I hear you did a fantastic presentation. Tell me more. And
Mm.
so I've actually, through that, get the teacher's intent, and then a single button, they can update our system, get the loop happening with the student and their carers to form that community to help Yaz be her best self. And I
That's
love
incredible.
that. And then we'll have later on, because a lot of parents don't speak English, so down the
Mm.
track, they'll have an option to toggle it between my
Wow.
language and their own. But the intent, what's the good intent? How do we build a connected community to support that student be their best self? Let's make
I,
that easy and let's use AI for that. That's what we've done. That's
I
now.
absolutely love that. What we're talking
Yeah.
about here as well is personalization, and
Hmm.
everybody performs better when it is about them, when we're getting into the detail around people's achievements or their development areas. And I think it really is creating a very seamless or frictionless way of connecting all of the key stakeholders. I know many of the schools listening today, if I had $1 for every time I'd heard, how do we get our parents, to come into school, to understand what's going on, to partner with us in our initiatives. It's these little small moments that start to draw them in and make them feel more involved and give them the fuel to have those important conversations with their kids at home. I also love the idea of making sure that, for our parents that are culturally or linguistically diverse, that they are included as well. These are inclusive practices that really need to be embedded into every facet, I guess, of the school system.
Yeah, absolutely.
What outcomes have you seen? Have you had any feedback from parents, from some of the students
So,
around
look,
this?
this is so green that we are launching it probably later this week or next week. So,
Okay.
feedback, those that I've shown have gone, oh my goodness, this is a game changer. Bring it on. Thank you so
Mm,
much.
mm,
But the proof will be in the pudding. So, hold
yeah.
that question and I'll tell you in a few
Oh, well,
months.
we'll have round two. We'll have you
Yeah,
have you
yeah,
back to debrief
yeah,
on how it's all gone. But I think the ability to include students in these conversations. I know, having spoken to you before, you're very focused on student voice at the school as well. So even with your program, is it called AI Champions, where you're
yeah, yeah,
teaching?
that's right.
You've got
Yeah.
educators that are mentors to other educators, but in the creation of policy, critical policy around things like AI, you
Mm.
have students included in that conversation. Tell me what led you to that.
So, our boss, best boss in the universe, at least the known universe,
Well, make sure
uh,
you listen,
her,
Kate.
yeah, yeah, that's right. Her first question of anyone who's doing anything would be, and tell me about how students are A, benefiting or having a say in what you're doing in that space. And so her rinse and repeat mantra is the student, student voice, student voice, student voice.
Mm,
That's first of all the start. How is your
mm,
head sponsoring students would be a good question to have.
mm,
Um, so what we're doing with the students at the moment is we've done a student-led mini meetup conference where students were by students for students. That was
mm,
lovely. Students spoke to our staff at the all staff day. They did their here's how we see tech, how we're using it. So that was a lovely way for them having a voice. And we've just this term launched a building designer group of students who are coming up with AI bots to support other students' growth. And so that will then go through the hoops and will be presented on the portal for students, the right audience to use. And also we're teaching it in specific classes there, again, building bots and learning about prompting. So
mm,
um, any opportunity that we can give them to craft their own world. And in many ways, this is what AI is putting a spotlight on, that we need to focus on autonomy. How do you
Mm,
grow students' autonomy so they are masters of their own learning? Because they could learn anything from a great tutor. And so getting them motivated, getting them able to learn under their own steam is such an important focus.
mm, mm.
Um, yeah. Can I just share the other thing? I said mention two things at
Yes.
the nirvana of where I'm heading.
We
So
want to hear about Nirvana,
yeah,
Anthony. Absolutely. Everybody does.
yeah. So
That's why we're here.
yeah, so AI is really, I was going to say another word, but really dangerous,
Mm,
horrible. And so we need good people to focus deeply on how to grow good digital citizens. And thank you,
mm,
Yasmin, for the work you guys are doing in that space. But AI can also equally create a wonderful opportunity, I think, democratizing access to
mm,
good growth. Back in '84, Bloom's study showing how students with a tutor can have huge, like move from a C to an A kind of growth if they get that feedback and that tutor.
mm,
AI is going to deliver that in a short-term future. Carnmigo is spruiking that. I'm spruiking that. So
mm, mm,
my goal, because I've got all of our great data about the teacher, about the student, about what they're working on at the moment, about their course, this portal that I've built is the ideal platform to experience AI that will be trained on your textbooks and the uh, curated documents that good teachers have put to say, this is what year seven science means to us in our local community. The
mm,
textbooks say what it means generally. The syllabus says what it's about. So it's grounded. And
mm.
going back to that trust element,
Yeah.
grounding your tutor in your context, your subject area is vital. So grounded. Then it's guided by the teacher. We have to think about how does AI put the teacher-student relationship at the core. It can't outsource to the AI. We tried everything, but there goes my doorbell.
We did airplane mode. We
Yeah,
made
yeah.
sure the
No,
notifications were off.
doorbell.
Anyway, it's the doorbell. No,
Yeah, yeah.
how do
So
we use
anyway,
AI to fix that one?
yeah, yeah. So we want the teachers to guide the conversation so they can steer. When can the
Mm,
kid use it? How will the AI respond? Is it going to ask them quizzes to check their understanding? Is it going to be a research assistant? Debate them to check for bias? The teacher's got to steer it. Then the AI will know the kid. Like I said, where it writes appropriate for the 6-year-old or the 16-year-old.
mm,
We've got all this wonderful data safely in our private secure bubble, but we'll feed the AI information about who it's working with. And
mm,
so it knows the student, it knows the intent of the teacher, knows the course they're working on. And then we link it into the context of where the student is. So when they're doing homework, it will talk just about the homework. When they're doing an assessment task, it will talk just about the assessment task. The
mm,
teacher will indicate how and when they can use, and the AI adapts to the teacher's instructions. So no longer is the student worried about, can I use AI? Because it's very clear that you can have a debate with AI on this topic.
mm,
In fact, the teacher
mm,
wants you to because it's going to help you grow and
mm,
ideate and think through what does good look like. And so the teachers sets that, and then the students engaging with that. And um, so it's grounded, steered by the teacher, knows the kid, it's contextually aware,
mm,
and that then also we give the teacher visibility so they can
mm,
see how students are engaging with it, so they can coach and guide and see
mm,
when kids need support or how to nudge. I think the metaphor for teachers going forward is the conductor of a large orchestra. Each student has their own instrument that they love. They're passionate about drums, trombone, violin. That's their passion. And they're
mm,
growing and they're focused on learning that. That's their task that they're giving. And the conductor has this ear that can hear all these different students doing their learning and can nudge this learner in that way, that learner in another way, that's
mm,
catered towards their passions, adapted to their skills and their point of growth. And then the task they're doing, the student then gets an AI tutor that can help nudge them to grow and be better, that's aligned
mm.
with the teacher. So
I
AI
love that.
personalized tutoring will democratize good growth for everybody.
It really will. And I think, you know, the words that keep popping up for me as I listen to you talk about that word trust and safety. And I think if we're personalizing it, whether we're regionalizing it or if we're creating it within our school and not relying on third parties, big tech tools, for example, would you say that's where we really get to the good stuff because of that insight and that knowledge?
Absolutely. So this is us for podcast. I'm doing the monkeys hear no evil, see no ill.
Yeah.
Um, if we outsource the use of AI to big tech external companies, as a teacher, the trust comes up. How's the
Mm,
student using it? I don't know. Who produced this? I don't know. How much
mm,
support did they need? I don't know. So straight off the bat, by outsourcing it, I don't know. And on the back of
mm.
that, there's decisions I'm going to make, a disposition I'm going to have, how I'm going to treat AI and the student simply because I have no visibility. So bring
Yeah.
it in, and also then the sharing of private data, the journey that the students went to, all these things start to
Mm.
unravel simply because we've outsourced the use of AI outside. So bringing it
That's
in and having teachers' visibility is again protective of trust and
mm.
protective of that teacher-student relationship.
It really unlocks. That's the key to unlocking it, isn't it? Because it makes us certain that that key word of certainty around, you know, fear of AI that we discussed for schools globally that we're getting reports by. Yeah, really sort of creating our own versions, knowing what data is being used, knowing what purpose it is. When we're able to have the answers to all of those questions, it builds that confidence, and that's where we really start to get the momentum. So I think that's a really, really important point
Yeah,
for
and look,
schools.
just for this might feel a bridge too far for a lot of people listening
Mm.
to this, but it's actually quite easy to start the journey here. It comes with some big trade-offs, privacy, bias, those sort of things. But that aside, nothing big like, hey, privacy.
Hey, don't worry about that.
Don't worry about
Nothing at all.
that.
Don't
But
worry about
anyway,
that.
yes, that aside, let me just unpack what I'm saying. If a school had one ChatGPT developer license, they can spin up a GPT that they're training and saying how it should behave. Then they get something like a Google site. They say that only people in my company, so my email domain, can access this. That's an option.
Mhm.
And they get like a Google site, put a little picture tile, and then link off to that and then share that with their class. So, yes, it's out in the public domain, but it is, if it's a workplace account, it's by and large
Mm.
safe-ish, private-ish, mostly. Um, but they're now steering the AI tool and giving it just to their group of learners in a
Mm.
way that they know is aligned to their growth intent for those
Yeah.
students at that point. And so there are tools that you can spin up yourself like that, or there are other tools out there that propose those sorts of um, options. So there's small steps that you can take to
Mm.
start to explore how can AI support your growth tasks that you give the students to help them think better rather than just outsource the making.
Yeah, it's really looking at that why and what we want the outcome to be rather than thinking about key terms like productivity. Like that's the one everybody wants an extra 10 hours in their week, don't get me wrong, but it's about looking further and really understanding it's those small simple steps. You know, you
Mm,
took the words out of my mouth. I was going to ask you about strategies for schools where maybe this does feel a bit out of their depth and a little bit overwhelming. Those small simple steps like creating a GPT in your school,
mm,
testing it, leaning in and learning a bit about this. We're in control of all of those sorts of
yeah.
things. Hopefully, having a leader like Kate at Pymble who is open and
Mm,
eager and ready to try, ready to iterate,
mm,
understanding that failure is sometimes part of it is also really, really helpful.
mm,
Because, you know, if we think about the alternative, that implicating question, and I'll always ask, is what happens if we do nothing?
yeah. Yeah.
Where are
It's not an
we?
option. It's actually a really bad option. We need good people to actively pursue this. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the other really easy one, well, financially easy, culturally hard, is our first strategy was to also, you can't control the mic
I love it. We've had it all.
overhead.
The speaker,
I'm at a school, folk.
there's not.
So
This podcast is nothing if not realistic.
that's right.
We like to
Background's
keep it
real.
real.
Yeah, yeah. So it looks like they're singing stuff. So the other thing that you can do is develop. We called it AI champions, but think of a book club, small groups of people kicking the tires of AI, discussing what they learn, thinking about what next, what the challenges are. So, what training, what human things can you do at your school to start conversations, um,
Mm,
tough conversations about safety and policy and learning and growth and assessment? They
mm,
have to use it. They have to feel what it's like. And
yeah.
so, starting a program to develop some AI champions where
Mm.
they can talk and discuss safely what they're experiencing is a wonderful way of nudging your whole community to think sharply about best practice with AI.
Yeah, I love that idea. It's really about creating an environment of psychological safety when it comes
Mm,
to these tricky topics. Educators, the ones that I know, they're so used to being the people with all the knowledge, the font of knowledge, the ability to answer everything, and this has really got a lot of people, understandably, feeling a bit out of their depth. So, as a school leader, as an exec, how can we create a psychologically safe environment for our educators to then lean into these conversations, and how can we create an environment where they're supported no matter what their level of digital literacy might be? I think sometimes that's a consideration because we have our IT directors who are really fluent, and then other staff members, depending on their own experience, who are at a really different stage. And so we've got to find ways to match those people, and make sure that we're elevating everybody through this process. Now, the last question I always like to ask is one key takeaway for our listeners. So we've talked about a lot of different things today,
mm,
but if you had one lesson that you learnt through this process that you want other schools to know about,
mm.
what would it be?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about something I haven't even spoken up to about now, which I hinted at, the how do we grow good users, not fancy tools. One of the things I think AI is going to do to what we need to think about with our students is we're used to assessing the student. They do the stuff, we assess it, evaluate their output and their growth, their mastery. When AI has come along, we needed to take very seriously their ability to assess what's being made by the tool. So we have a rubric mentality in our head as teachers. This rows are what's important in this task, and the columns are what good looks like, from poor to fantastic. The students need to do that. They need to be bossy as the creators and authors, those with the will and the intent to do good. And then when AI spits something out, they need to know enough to say, well, this is important, that's irrelevant, this is not true, and that bit doesn't look good. This bit, it would look better in such and such a way. But we're so used to assessing them that we're not focusing on how can we elevate them so that they know
Mm,
enough and they've got the critical thinking to be able to assess what's made.
mm,
So there's a whole raft of things that we need to think about growing good digital citizens. And just one of them obviously would be ethics, critical thinking, but that how do they assess rather than being assessed would be a lovely question to anyone in how they're
mm,
growing that at their school. And it's an analog question, not digital. Um, how do they give feedback? How do they
yeah.
receive feedback? How do they assess? I'd love schools to be thinking about that sort of level up
Mm.
in growing good users.
It's really about critical thinking and helping students sort of sit in the role of the teacher, I guess. If they're utilizing a tool to assist them, they need those same skills. So I
Mm,
think that's really, really great advice. So much fantastic information in such a short time, Anthony. Thank you so much for sharing all of your insights, all of your knowledge. You're definitely the font of knowledge when it comes to AI. My key takeaways, obviously it's not an option now as to whether schools can do it or not when it comes to AI. It's inevitable. So we need to find ways that are right for us, personalized ways for our schools, for us to lean into the AI conversations and obviously strategies. Also, that the benefits of AI are really tremendous, but we do need to look at things in more detail. So, what is the outcome that we're looking for here rather than thinking about the simplistic forms of productivity? How are we developing our kids and our students for that next phase of life? And the last one was really, reflecting back on the inclusion of student voice at every level. Often we all talk about these digital natives, kids being so much more tech literate than we are as adults. So the smart thing is to leverage that knowledge, right? Help them feel included, show visibility about how their voice is being used so that they know that their efforts to be part of this are actually being recognized and implemented as well. I think there's so much to that student voice conversation.
Mm.
But overall, some incredible tips from you. Thank you again for joining us at Spotlight by Qoria. One of the things that we say at Qoria is that as the digital world evolves, so must we. So thank you for your ability and your insights in helping us do just that, Anthony.
An absolute delight. Thanks, Yasmin.
Thanks so much for listening in. If you enjoyed today's episode of Qoria's Spotlight on Student Digital Safety, subscribe now, give us a follow, or reach out to let us know what you'd like to hear more about. Spotlight is all about providing useful information for schools by schools, and we can't wait to hear from you.